Right, shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to another holy day, the Feast of Tabernacles.
God.
Before I go into this, someone asked a question on Twitter a year. Not asked a question. They made a statement a year ago, which I thought was a good statement. It was something that, as Israelites, it was regarding the atonement, which preceded this, right? That we need to know how to answer when someone comes up with something like that, right? The woman went to Romans chapter 5, right? She brought something out that I thought made a lot of sense. And then I was like, that's something that we're going to have to answer when that atonement comes up again. So what the woman said was, she went to Romans chapter 5, right? Start at verse 10. Let me get that.
Reading out of the book of Romans, chapter 5 and verse 10.
Okay.
For if, when we were enemies, we were reconciled to Yahweh by the death of his Son, much more, being reconciled, we shall be saved by his life.
Right, so that makes sense. With the death of Yahweh, we're reconciled to Yahweh by the death of his Son. But this is the point the woman brought out. Go ahead, verse 11.
And not only so, but we also joy in Yahweh through our Adawan, Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, by whom we have now received the atonement.
By whom we have now received the atonement. So if we received it by Yahweh Shai, what is the point of us fasting? If the atonement's received, why are we fasting? How would we answer that question? So the scripture always answers itself. So now, let's go to Matthew chapter 9. And we're going to start at verse 14. So if anyone ever asks you, why are you fasting? Christ is our atonement. You shouldn't be fasting. What are you doing? You go to Matthew chapter 9, you start at verse 14, and you give them this answer as your response. Matthew chapter 9, start at verse 14.
Reading out of the book of Matthew, chapter 9 and verse 14. Then came to him the disciples of John, saying, why do we and the Pharisees fast oft, but thy disciples fast not?
So they're asking, we fast all the time, but your disciples don't even fast. Go ahead.
And Yahweh said unto them, can the children of the bride chamber mourn, as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then shall they fast.
Is Yahweh Shai in the flesh right now?
No.
That's why we fast, because the bridegroom is not with us. So we fast, so we will stop when he returns. So while he is not on this earth, we continue to fast. That's why he said the disciples will fast when the bridegroom is not here. That's how you answer that question. Why do you fast in the Christ of the atonement? Because he's not here right now. He has to return. So if that ever comes up, that's how you answer that question. All right, so let's go into tabernacles. Let's start at Leviticus chapter 23. And we'll go to verses 33 to 36. All right, so tabernacles, we know, essentially we're camping and we're out in the wilderness. What we have to start paying attention to is not only the feast, but why we have them. What is the purpose of the feast? What are we to be shown from observing the feast is a question you want to ask. And hopefully by the time we get to the end of this, it'll be answered. Right? Let's go to Leviticus 23, start at verse 33.
Reading out of the book of Leviticus, chapter 23 and verse 33.
Okay.
And the Most High spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, the 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles, for 7 days unto the Most High.
So it's to speak unto the children of Israel, saying the 15th day of this 7th month, what we're doing now, shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto Yahweh, right? Plain and simple. Continue.
On the first day shall be in holy convocation.
That is tonight, for us at least. The first day we are having this holy convocation. So we're keeping this. Go ahead.
Ye shall do no servile work therein.
So for the most part, we are in our captivity, but everybody here is not doing any servile work, and hopes those that are working are keeping it in spirit. Go ahead.
7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Most High.
Right? So this is a feast. So 7 days you should be made an offering, right, by fire unto Yahweh. But pay attention, because remember what it just said in the verse, for 7 days unto Yahweh. But continue on.
On the 8th day.
On the 8th day. I want you to keep that in mind. On the 8th day, go ahead.
Shall be an holy convocation unto you.
So notice how many days did it say we would keep this? 7. But it said to do what on the 8th day?
Gather.
Keep another gather. Go ahead.
And ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Most High. It is a solemn assembly. And ye shall do no servile work therein.
So notice, it says, in 7 days you shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. On the 8th day shall be an holy convocation unto you. You shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. It is a solemn assembly to you. Right. So what is the word solemn? A solemn is something, you hold once in a while. It's a religious thing. It's consecrated. It's secluded. It's sanctified, right? It's essentially saying a holy assembly. But notice it's telling us to do this on the 8th day, right? So we're going to keep that in mind as we go through the scriptures, right? Let's go to Nehemiah chapter 8 and verse 14. And we're going to read to 18. Because this is when the Israelites were in booths, right? There's numerous occasions where we're going to these specific scriptures. So Nehemiah chapter 8, verses 14 to 18.
Reading out of the book of Nehemiah, chapter 8 and verse 14.
Go ahead.
And they found written in the law, which the Most High had commanded by Moses, that the children of Israel should dwell in booths in the feast of the 7th month.
So they found that, right? That the children of Israel should dwell in booths in the 7th month, right? Go ahead.
And that they should publish and proclaim in all their cities and in Jerusalem, saying, go forth unto the mount,
right,
and fetch olive branches,
right,
and pine branches,
right,
and myrtle branches, and palm branches,
right,
and branches of thick trees, to make booths, as it is written. So
you see all the branches that were used, right? It's not just a few. There's quite a few branches that could be used. But initially what the Israelites did, they made the tents out of those branches. They didn't just have tents like we do today, whatever the case is, which can't knock what we do. We're doing the best with what we got. But right, this is what they did. So they were told to dwell in booths, and they remembered that it was a commandment that came through Moses. But I want you to also notice something else that was there, right? Because we realize everything throughout this book is eventually a revelation of Yahushua and Yahweh. So notice it also said fetch olive branches. Keep that in mind. You have an 8th day. You also have olive branches that you ought to fetch, right? Because we remember olive comes up quite a few times throughout the book, right? Verse 16.
So the people went forth and brought them and made themselves booths, every one upon the roof of his house.
So if you got a deck or you have a house that you can go on top of and you're not with the group, you can keep it on top of your house or on your deck, so long as you're outside in the group, right? Go ahead.
And in their courts, and in the courts of the house of Yahweh.
Right, so let's just like say we have a cabin, even on the outside. If you have a cabin, you can come out, stay on the outside. If you rented an Airbnb, put the tent in the grass, go inside, use the bathroom, come back out, right? Go ahead.
And in the street of the water gate, and in the street of the gate of Ephraim.
Go ahead.
And all the congregation of them that were come again out of the captivity made booths.
Right, so I want you to notice that what he said. He said, and all the congregation of them that will come again out of captivity made booths. Are we in our captivity? Think about the significance then of tabernacles. Right, go ahead.
And sat under the booths. For since the days of Jeshua the son of Nun, unto that day, had not the children of Israel done so.
So the same since we were in America, right? Until we learned of all of this, we weren't keeping it either. Until we learned about it. Go ahead.
And there was a very great gladness.
And there's gladness, there's joy in this. And even going back, even the elder Yahweh said the other day, something that we have a tendency with atonement, right? We want to confess our sins to the Most High, right? We want to speak and we want to get in line and be literally at one with the Most High. But at the same time, we are to rejoice while we're doing it, because we get so caught up in feeling down that we forget it's still a feast. It's spiritual bread that we're taking that day. And we're supposed to be happy that he's forgiving us of the sins, that he even allowed us to make it to that day. So that's something we want to keep in mind for the next year. It's also a celebration. Even though it's somber, we're supposed to celebrate, right? Because he said while all of this was going on in your trials and tribulations, be joyful, right? So if that's a day to afflict us, even in that, we're supposed to be joyful that it's even happening, right? But that's something to keep in mind also. Verse 18.
Also, day by day, from the first day unto the last day, he read in the book of the law of Yahweh.
Right, so while we're away or while we're keeping this day, we also continue to read. Go ahead.
And they kept the feast 7 days.
Notice they kept the feast 7 days. Go ahead.
And on the 8th day.
And on the 8th day
was a solemn assembly, according unto the manner.
Notice it keeps repeating that. Day 8. Day 8. Keep it for 7, but day 8. Right? So now let's go to Exodus chapter 20. And we're going to start at verse 30. And we're going to stay in Exodus.
You said 32?
30. And we're going to read to 38.
Sorry, one more time, brother.
Exodus 20 and 33.
I think you need we only have 26.
Oh. Whoops. You said what's that?
Exodus 20 only goes to 26. I thought you said 30.
I'm sorry, Ezekiel. Because I'm like, wait, what? Salak, I'm thinking of the Exodus. But in Ezekiel, talking about the Exodus.
Ezekiel 20.
20 and 30. I was not in my Bible.
Reading out of the book of Ezekiel, chapter 20.
I don't like the emphasis. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Wherefore say unto the house of Israel, thus saith the Most High Yahweh, are ye polluted after the manner of your fathers?
Hold on, 20 and 33?
33. Slakia. As I live, saith the Most High Yahweh, surely with a mighty hand, and with a stretched out arm, and with fury poured out will I rule over you.
So we know when Yahweh Shah and Yahweh returns, it's not going to be a light thing. With fury and a stretched out arm, I will rule over you. Go ahead.
And I will bring you out from the people, and will gather you out of the countries wherein ye are scattered.
So that's what's also going to take place. I will bring you out from the people and gather you from the countries where you've been scattered. Go ahead.
With a mighty hand, and with a stretched out arm, and with fury poured out.
Right. And he will do what? Go ahead.
And I will bring you into the wilderness.
This is why we are in booths, because I will bring you into the wilderness. Go ahead.
And there will I plead with you face to face.
Face to face. Go ahead.
Like as I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt. So will I plead with you, saith the Most High Yahweh.
So you want to keep in mind, too, the reason for you even being in booths, you have to ask the question, what's happening that we have to be in booths? Or what took place that we can't stay where we were before, right? When you look at all the feast days, you got to ask why this is happening, what event is taking place, right? So we're keeping them. We keep everything in practice. We rehearse the righteous acts. Why? Because at some point, the play is going to start. And it's not going to be a practice anymore. It's going to be the actual event. So if we're staying in tents, something's wrong with where we were, right? Go ahead. 37. Okay, go ahead.
Like as I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt, so will I plead with you, saith the Most High Yahweh.
Right.
And I will cause you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant.
Keep that in mind. Underline that. I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. I'll clue you in where we're going. I'll bring you into the bond of the covenant. He said, keep 7 days, but do on the 8th day, have a convocation, right? Okay, go ahead.
Verse 38. And I will purge out from among you the rebels.
Keep in mind, I will purge out from among you the rebels. So just because you made it to level 1 doesn't guarantee level 2. Now I got you here, now I'm going to purge out the rebels.
That's right.
Because some of you are doing some things that I don't like, and I'm going to figure out who's who. So weeding out process. It's the same thing in the military, same thing police department, fire department. They get groups of people, and they sift. They see And sifting causes affliction. It causes pain. Fill out these papers. Do this. Go run 10 miles or whatever. And they're going to see who's going to fall and who can keep pushing. Some people might fall, but they're like, but he got back up though.
Right.
And some people fall and drop off, get rid of that one. So this is what the Most High is doing with his people. I brought you all together. Now, not every single person got to that wilderness, right? We know that. Not every single person will get to that wilderness, but the people that got there, I'm going to sift you even further now, right? I'm going to purge out the rebels from among you. Go ahead.
And them that transgress against me,
And then even then, you're going to be transgression against the Most High. Go ahead.
I will bring them forth out of the country where they sojourn, and they shall not enter into the land of Israel, and ye shall know that I am the Most
So
High.
it's just not automatic acceptance, right? And a lot of times that people get taught, you think because you're an Israelite, you just make it. Don't work like that. If that was the case, we essentially be Christians.
Right.
Oh, I'm sanctified and I'm anointed, so I'm going to Israel then, right? Doesn't work that way, right? So we read 38.
Yep.
So let's go to Ezekiel. We'll stay in there, 43, and we're going to start at verse 19. Again, we're keeping up the theme of tabernacles, the 7 days we keep, and a special note that keeps mentioning the 8th day.
Reading out of the book of Ezekiel, chapter 43 and verse 19. And thou shalt give to the priests, the Levites, that be of the seed of Zadok, which approach unto me, to minister unto me, saith the Most High Yahweh, a young bullock for a sin offering.
So a good thing that Brother War brought out when he talked about the atonement, even the priests needed a sacrifice for themselves before they could even do the sacrifice for someone else for their sins, right? So right now he's going into what the priests have to do to even approach me, to minister to me, right? Go ahead.
And thou shalt take of the blood thereof, and put it on the four horns of it, and on the four corners of the settle,
Right.
up and upon the border round about. Thus shalt thou cleanse and purge it.
Right.
Thou shalt take the bullock also of the sin offering, and he shall burn it in the appointed place of the house without the sanctuary. And on the second day thou shalt offer.
So I'm sorry. He said it shall burn it what? In the appointed place of the house without the sanctuary. It cannot be in the sanctuary. So keep that in mind with blood. Blood stays outside of the sanctuary. Go ahead.
And on the second day thou shalt offer a kid of the goats without blemish for a sin offering. And they shall cleanse the altar, as they did cleanse it with the bullock.
Right.
When thou hast made an end of cleansing it, thou shalt offer a young bullock without blemish, and a ram out of the flock without blemish.
So again, we see the blood stays outside without the congregation, right? But notice, keep this in mind, because this is a recurring theme also. You shall offer a young bullock without blemish, a ram out of the flock without blemish. Sounds like Passover, right? There's certain criteria that anytime a sin offering is made, right? And what else did we see before? One of the branches that we could use, olive branches, right? So you see how this is starting to build up to where this is actually going and the purpose of doing this? Go ahead.
And thou shalt offer them before the Most High, and the priest shall cast salt upon them, and they shall offer them up for a burnt offering unto the Most High.
Right.
7 days shalt thou prepare every day a goat for a sin offering. They shall also prepare a young bullock, and a ram out of the flock without blemish.
Right.
7 days shall they purge the altar and purify it.
Right. So notice, 7 days shall they purge the altar and purify it. Right. Go ahead.
And they shall consecrate themselves. And when these days are expired, it shall be that upon the 8th day,
the 8th day after you purge and clean, go ahead.
and so forward, the priest shall make your burnt offerings upon the altar, and your peace offerings, and I will accept you, saith the Most High.
So notice, after the 7 days, after the purging and the cleansing now, right, we get into the 8th day. But notice what he says at the end of that. I will accept you, right? Let's go to Genesis chapter 17 and verse 9. So let's get to the origin of where a lot of these things are coming from.
Reading out of the book of Genesis, chapter 17 and verse 9.
And we're going to go to 14.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Yahweh said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore, thou and thy seed after thee in their generations.
So let's look at that. So this is Abraham, right, speaking with the Most High. He says, Thou shalt keep my covenant, right? Remember, he said, I'm going to put you under the bondage of the covenant, right? So we're repeating a lot of things that took place already. And he says, and thou and thy seed. There's no S's on that, right? There's no S. So it's not every person that Abraham had. And thy seed after thee. Go ahead.
This is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee.
And thy seed. Go ahead.
Every man child among you shall be circumcised.
Right. Go ahead.
And he shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin.
Right.
And it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you.
So this is one of the first signs of the covenant, was taking what? Circumcising your flesh, right? Because that shows what? That you have faith in what he's saying. Abraham is showing, I have faith in you and I'm going to make an outward show that I'm going to do what you said, right? Go ahead.
And he that is 8 days old.
And he that is what?
8 days old.
So now it's he that is 8 days old. We just read at the end of the other, right? He said, in the 8th day, once you do this, I will accept you. Now we go back to the circumcision. Once you make the circumcision, he says what?
And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generation. He that is born in the house, or bought with money, or any stranger, which is not of thy seed.
So when we see the number 8, the word that keeps coming up is acceptance. Acceptance. And we're going to figure out why that comes up on that day. Go ahead.
He that is born in thy house, and he that is bought with thy money,
right,
must needs be circumcised.
You bring anyone into your home and they're part of your family, they too must be circumcised if they're in that household, right?
And my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant.
For an everlasting covenant. So notice, right, for the males, when we come into this truth, I don't know if there's any who's still not circumcised or whatever the case is. We get that spirit, right? The Most High speaks to us, whether it's circumstances or whatever it is, and he speaks to us, right? Many of us, and I say that was through a blessing of the Most High, were circumcised in the hospital, right? So I caught you already. I got you. You're eventually going to get to me, right? So you go and show that outward sign of circumcision, right? Because you're showing what? Acceptance of his covenant, and acceptance in an agreement. And he says, when you do this, I will accept you. So it's a first step, right? So what you're essentially doing is, now that you're showing in your flesh that you're stepping from flesh and going into faith and spirituality. Go ahead.
Verse 14. And the uncircumcised man-child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised.
So now, and the uncircumcised man, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, right? We're dealing strictly in the flesh at this time. So some of you who are not, don't worry just yet, right? Notice, it's dealing in the flesh of his foreskin. Go ahead. It's not circumcised.
That soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant.
Because he made an agreement. If you do this, this is what happens. I'll accept you. So if someone comes along and you don't want to follow suit with what he says, he won't accept that. You're breaking his covenant. Even today, you're coming in, he has the law, statutes, commandments, and everything else, and you say, well, you won't accept that, he won't accept you either. Right? So this is the flesh version of it. This is just the beginning. He's not even into everything else yet, and you won't take that first step. Why should he accept you? Right? Go ahead.
That was 14.
That was 14. Go ahead.
Keep going.
You know what? No. Let's go to Exodus. We're going to go to Exodus chapter 22. And we're going to start reading from verse 29. The real Exodus this time.
Reading out of the book of Exodus, chapter 22 and verse 29.
Give me 1 second. Catch it. All right, go ahead.
Thou shalt not delay to offer the first of thy ripe fruits and of thy liquors.
Right.
The firstborn of thy sons shalt thou give unto me.
So notice, you should not delay to offer the first of thy ripe fruits and thy liquors and the firstborn of thy sons. thou shalt give unto me. Like Yahweh, right? That's his. Like Samson and so on and so forth. When you have those first fruits, notice what he's asking for. Those belong to me. Do we not have a first fruits that we keep? When you look at the holy days, not just, okay, we keep the holy days, look at the placement of it and what he's asking for when that holy day comes up. Look at Passover, right? We went before and he said, he does what? He purges with blood, right? So you cleanse, right? And then the next day is what? Unleavened bread. Now that I cleansed you, start to remove that old man, right? So it's a process. The holy days are a process. They are telling you a story. You have to keep them in order to know how the story unfolds and how it finishes, right? Continue on.
Verse 30.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise shalt thou do with thine oxen and with thy sheep.
Right.
7 days it shall be with his dam.
So 7 days it shall be with his dam. So a dam is a female quadruped, or any cow or any animal that's a female, that's the mother. So 7 days it'll be with the mother. Go ahead.
On the 8th day.
On the 8th day.
Thou shalt give it me.
Because on the 8th day is acceptance. On the 8th day, you've met the criteria. Now you're to the point where I accept you. Go ahead.
And he shall be holy men unto me.
And he shall be holy men unto me. On the 8th day, you were circumcised. You gave that outward show that you believed in what I said. Now you're acceptable to me. Go ahead.
Neither shall ye eat any flesh that is torn of beasts.
So notice the difference now, right? Neither shall ye eat any flesh that is torn of beasts. So notice he keeps mentioning the flesh aspect and the removal of the flesh. Go ahead.
That is torn of beasts in the field.
Right.
Ye shall cast it to the dogs.
Because the flesh is for those that are not accepted. Cast it to the dogs. Right? Go ahead. So notice what comes with acceptance. It's a form of removing the flesh and removing the older. Right? Go ahead.
Was it on that one? Or you only going to 23?
Yeah, that was it. It was up to 31, right? Yeah, hold that. And so notice with Passover, right? We have the lamb. The lamb is purged of the blood, right? That's covering our sins. Unleavened bread is what? We go from flesh to spiritual. We're removing the old stuff, right? So notice that's a reoccurring theme. Flesh first, then you become spiritual. Start to do these things in your flesh and achieve the spirituality that I'm looking for. Then acceptance comes, right? Just like when you come into the truth, right? This is the Lord loves a broken and contrite heart. All the things of the world essentially destroyed you and did what? Opened you up to allow that spirit to come out and allow him to come in. In a sense, that's like an 8th day. Now you're acceptable because your flesh is broken now. Now you're not that person. Now you're who I said you were, right? And then he speaks to you. So start to notice this every time you keep a feast. It's the same. He tells you the same thing over and over so you can get the point of it, right? So let's go to Numbers, chapter 29. I'm going to start at verse 12. Slop. Yeah, let me know when you got it.
Number 29 and
12.
Reading out of the book of Numbers, chapter 29 and verse 12.
Go ahead.
And on the 15th day of the 7th month, ye shall have an holy convocation.
So just like we're doing now, we're back right into the Feast of Tabernacles. Go ahead.
Ye shall do no servile work.
Good. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And ye shall keep a feast unto the Most High 7 days.
So again, he's given us the criteria for keeping tabernacles. Now drop down to verse 32.
Verse 32.
And read to 36.
And on the 7th day, 7 bullocks, 2 rams, and 14 lambs of the first year without blemish. And their meat offering and their drink offerings for the bullocks, for the rams, and for the lambs shall be according to their number after the manner. And 1 goat for a sin offering, beside the continual burnt offering, his meat offering, and his drink offering.
Go ahead.
On the 8th day, ye shall have a solemn assembly. Ye shall do no servile work therein.
Right.
But ye shall offer a burnt offering, a sacrifice made by fire of a sweet savor unto the Most High.
Right.
1 bullock, 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year without blemish.
So we see the same criteria, right? He's repeating himself, right? So now let's go back to Leviticus. And we're going to go to chapter 8 and 33 to 36. Leviticus 8, 33 to 36. Mm-hmm. So this is so we're going into the consecration or the cleaning of the priest, right? Go ahead.
Reading out of the book of Leviticus, chapter 8 and verse 33. And ye shall not go out of the door of the tabernacle of the congregation in 7 days, until the days of your consecration be at an end. For 7 days shall he consecrate.
So in 7 days he's consecrating you. He's leaving you back. He's cleaning you up for 7 days. Go ahead.
As he hath done this day, so the Most High hath commanded to do, to make an atonement for you.
So this goes into these things, even keeping tabernacles. Everything we keep, we're still doing a form of atonement. This is not the specific one where he told you to afflict your souls. But each time we do this, we're making an atonement. We essentially make an atonement on Passover also, right? Go ahead.
Verse 34, to verse 35. Therefore shall ye abide at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation day and night 7 days, and keep the charge of the Most High, that ye die not.
Right.
For so I am commanded.
So remember, we got to keep the charge of the Most High, so ye die not. And he was less lenient back then than he is than when his son came. Right? Go ahead.
So Aaron and his sons did all things which the Most High commanded by the hand of Moses.
All right, let's go to Leviticus 22. And we're going to go from 18 to verse 27.
Reading out of the book of Leviticus, chapter 22 and verse 18. Speak unto Aaron, unto his sons, and unto all the children of Israel, and say unto them, whatsoever he be of the house of Israel, or of the strangers in Israel, that will offer his oblation for all his vows, and for all his freewill offerings, which they will offer unto the Most High for a burnt offering. Ye shall offer at your own will. Ye shall offer at your own will a male without blemish, of the beeves, of the sheep, or of the goats.
So the beeves are cows, right? So this is like a plural of beef back in the 1600s when he wrote this. Beeves. Go ahead.
But whatsoever hath a blemish, that shall ye not offer, for it shall not be acceptable for you.
So imagine someone coming and trying to pray to the Most High and Yahushua is not willing to change their ways. That's unacceptable. That has a blemish. That has a stain and a blot in it. I don't want it. Go ahead.
And whosoever offereth a sacrifice of peace offerings unto the Most High, to accomplish his vow, or a freewill offering in the beeves or sheep, it shall be perfect to be accepted. There shall be no blemish therein.
It shall be perfect to be accepted, and there shall be no blemish with it. So how fortunate are we that Yahushua came? Because there'd have been no way we could make it.
Right.
It'd be impossible. Right? Go ahead.
Blind or broken or maimed or having a wen or scurvy or scabbed, ye shall not offer these unto the Most High, nor make an offering by fire of them upon the altar unto the Most High.
And weren't those the type of people Yahushua was healing when he came? Right? Because he had to make them whole and acceptable. Right? Go ahead.
Either a bullock or a lamb that hath anything superfluous.
So extra. Go ahead.
Or lacking in his parts, that mayest thou offer for a free will offering. But for a vow it shall not be accepted.
You don't want to make a vow for this. You don't want to swear to this. But if it's your own free will, fine. But to make a vow for me, it's got to be perfect. Go ahead.
Ye shall not offer unto the Most High that which is bruised, or crushed,
Right.
or broken, or cut. Neither shall ye make any offering thereof in your land.
Right.
Neither from a stranger's hand shall ye offer the bread of your power of any of these, because their corruption is in them.
So he doesn't just accept anybody in any shape or form. He has a criteria for what he wants. Go ahead.
And blemishes be in them. Neither from a stranger's hand shall you offer the bread of your power of any of these, because their corruption is in them.
Right.
And blemishes be in them, they shall not be accepted for you.
Right. Go ahead.
Oh. And the Most High spake unto Moses, saying, when a bullock or a sheep or a goat is brought forth, then it shall be 7 days under the dam.
7 days under its mother.
And from the 8th day and thenceforth it shall be accepted for an offering made by fire unto the Most
Because
High.
within those 7 days, that's being consecrated and being cleansed. And in the 8th day is perfection that it can be given for that vow. Right? So let's go back to Leviticus 12. And then we're going to do a little jumping in this one.
So, what book was it?
Leviticus 12. And we're going to start 1 to 6.
Reading out of the book of Leviticus, chapter 12 and verse 1.
Yeah. Go ahead. And I want you to pay attention to what we're reading in Leviticus. Go ahead.
And the Most High spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, if a woman have conceived seed, and born a man child,
Right.
then she shall be unclean 7 days,
Right.
according to the days of the separation, for her infirmity shall she be unclean.
So ladies, we've heard this before when you go into Leviticus 15, correct? About being clean and unclean. And there's unclean for males as well. They have a discharge. But keep in mind why this is being said. Go ahead.
And in the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised.
So while the mother's consecrated, right, the child is with the mother. So essentially, just like the animals in the rehearsal, he's with this dam for 7 days. And in the 8th day shall the flesh of his foreskin be circumcised. Because now you're making a vow to me, and this child has to be perfect. Right? Go ahead.
And she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 3 days.
Right.
She shall touch no hallowed thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying be fulfilled.
Right? She can't come in because remember, blood is always without the sanctuary. Right? Go ahead.
But if she bear a maid child, then shall she be unclean 2 weeks, as in her separation. And she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 66 days.
Okay. Go ahead.
And when the days of her purifying are fulfilled for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation unto the priest.
Right. So again, we bring when the days are fulfilled, they shall bring a lamb of the first year. So we're seeing the mother's thing with the dam. We're seeing all these things like a repeated theme without blemish, lamb of the first year. And notice that each time we're touching different aspects of the holy days that we keep. Right. So now let's drop down to verse. Let me check this. 12. I think that's the one.
Yeah, I think that's the one.
So notice, so we mentioned the blood, right? We mentioned the blood. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 15. Freestyle this. Sisters, what verse should I start at? 25. Leviticus chapter 15 and verse 25. Right? Just read 25.
Reading out of the book of Leviticus, chapter 15 and verse 25. And if a woman have an issue of her blood many days out of the time of her separation.
So keep that in mind. And if a woman have an issue of her blood many days out of the time of her separation, go ahead.
Or if it run beyond the time of her separation, all the days of the issue of her uncleanness shall be as the days of her separation. She shall be unclean.
Now, with that in mind, let's jump to Matthew. And we're going to go again. Sticking my pages. And we're going to start at verse 18. We're going to go to Matthew chapter 9 and start at verse 18.
Matthew chapter 9 and verse 18. While he spake these things unto them, behold, there came a certain ruler and worshipped him, saying, My daughter is even now dead, but come and lay thy hand upon her, and she shall live. And Yahushua arose and followed him, and so did his disciples. And behold, a woman which was diseased with an issue of blood 12 years.
So we just read about that, right? In Leviticus, right? What happens if it's out of that course? Go ahead.
Came behind him and touched the hem of his garment.
Right.
For she said within herself, if I may but touch his garment, I shall be whole.
Right. And so notice, essentially what she did is she made a free will offering of herself to touch his garment. Right. Go ahead.
But Yahushua turned him about. And when he saw her, he said, Daughter, be of good comfort. Thy faith hath made thee whole. And the woman was made whole from that hour. So
notice she was in her uncleanliness, right? And she thought by strictly faith, if I just touch his garment, I will be made whole.
That's right.
Notice he did not reject her. She was unclean and she touched him. And he said, Daughter, be of good comfort. He comforted her with his word. Because of her faith. Her faith made her clean, right? That's why he knew someone touched him. And he turned and said, Daughter, be of good comfort. Thy faith made thee whole, right? So essentially, this is like a free will offering that she made of herself, right? She brought herself to him. It wasn't requested. She believed and made that free will offering, and he accepted that. Daughter, be of good comfort, right? So even though we read in certain instances that things are unclean, with his mercy and your show of faith, he can make you clean, right? So again, he comes in the volume of the book. So things we're seeing in the Old Testament, we see him live out in the New Testament, right? So let's get back to where we're going. Let's go to Luke, and we're going to go to chapter 1. And we're going to start at verse 57. So we're still within tabernacles, but we're going towards the end of the tabernacles, which is that 8th day that keeps popping up. All right, go ahead.
Reading out of the book of Luke, chapter 1 and verse 57.
I ain't even there yet. Go ahead.
You ready? Now Elizabeth's full time came that she should be delivered.
Right.
And she brought forth a son. And her neighbors and her cousins heard how the Most High had showed great mercy upon her. And they rejoiced with her. And it came to pass that on the 8th day they came to circumcise the child. And they called him Zacharias, after the name of his father.
After the name of his father, on the 8th day. Let's go to Acts chapter 7 and verse 8. Chapter 7 and verse 8.
You know when you're ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Reading out of the book of Acts, chapter 7 and verse 8. And he gave him the covenant of circumcision.
Right.
And so Abraham begat Isaac, and circumcised him the 8th day. And Isaac begat Jacob.
Right.
And Jacob begat the 12 patriarchs. And the patriarchs, moved with envy, sold Joseph into Egypt. But Yahweh was with him, and delivered him out of all his afflictions,
Right.
and gave him favor and wisdom in the sight of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he made him governor over Egypt and all his house. Now there came a dearth over all the land of Egypt and Canaan, and great affliction, and our fathers found no sustenance.
Now hold right there. Check this out. I only wanted verse 8. But that's good.
my bad.
Sorry. Let's go to Philippians chapter 3 and verse 5. Which are a very good reader.
Go on. You said Philippians 3 and
8. I'm sorry, 5.
5.
Start at 4. Sisters of laughter. Start at 1. Start at 1 and go to 5.
Reading out of the book of Philippians, chapter 3 and verse 1.
Right?
Finally, my brethren, rejoice in the Most High, to write the same things to you. To me, indeed, is not grievous, but for you it is safe. Beware of dogs, beware of evil workers, beware of the concision.
So it's telling you to watch out of those who are outside, right? Go ahead.
For we are the circumcision, for worship Yahweh in the spirit, which worship Yahweh in the spirit.
So that's the key to the circumcision. For we are the circumcision which worship Yahweh in the spirit. Remember, that first step was to lead to your spiritual life, showing your faith and doing that act in your flesh. Go ahead.
And rejoice in Hamashiach Yahweh Shai, and have no confidence in the flesh.
Leaving the flesh behind, which is like unleavened bread, right? Go ahead.
Though I might also have confidence in the flesh, if any other man thinketh that he hath whereof he might trust in the flesh, I more. Circumcised the 8th day of the stock of Israel,
Right.
of the tribe of Benjamin, and Hebrew of the Hebrews, as touching the law, a Pharisee.
We're going to stop at 5, but the key that I want to hear was, again, circumcised, right? And showing that faith and circumcised the 8th day. Because here Paul's about to brag. Let everybody know what it's about, right? Circumcised the 8th day. So from here, let's go to Luke chapter 2. And we're going to start at verse 19. We're going to read 19 and 20.
Luke 2:19.
19 and 21. And the reason I'm bringing this stuff up and why I'm focusing on the last day of it, because a lot of us know, right, it's an ordinance, it's something we have to keep. We have to keep tabernacles, right? And we know we have to be intense and we know we have to keep a feast. But at the same time, although we're doing it, we want to keep in mind of the spiritual aspect. Because notice he says consecration. So what's happening in that time frame, we're away from the world. So we're being consecrated. We're away from society and all the normal things, so we're away from that. And on the 8th day is where we're getting to. What happens after we've been consecrated. Go ahead.
Reading out of the book of Luke, chapter 2 and verse 19.
Go ahead.
But Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart.
Right.
And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising Yahweh for all the things that they had heard and seen, as it was told unto them.
Right.
And when 8 days were accomplished for the circumcising of the child, his name was called Yahushua, which was so named of the angel before he was conceived in the womb.
So even unto Yahushua, right, this was kept. This law was kept. It's amazing how people miss this with Paul and Yahushua, that they were circumcised at 8. They were keeping the law up to the end of this book, right? It's amazing how people miss that. So from here, let's go to Luke 9. And we're going to read 22 to 36.
Reading out of the book of Luke, chapter 9 and verse 22. Saying, the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected of the elders, and chief priests and scribes, and be slain, and be raised the 3rd day.
So notice he's rejected of the elders, the chief priests and scribes. That's not all of Israel. that's them who reject. So there's this misconception that all of Israel, all the Jews reject. It wasn't everybody, right? Go ahead.
And he said to them all, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me.
The first show of that was with Abraham, right? Denied himself, right? He made the circumcision and he followed after him, right? Go ahead.
For whosoever will save his life shall lose it.
Mm-hmm.
But whosoever will lose his life for my sake, the same shall save it.
So simply saying, whoever wants to hold on to what they have now, you're going to lose everything. Mm-hmm. But who's ever willing to let it go, I'll give you everything, right? Go ahead.
For what is a man advantaged if he gain the whole world and lose himself or be cast away?
Right, we see that all the time with artists and everybody else. You gain everything, but you lose yourself. Mm-hmm. We end up calling you a coon, a sellout, and all these things. And that's just with the people, right? So spiritually, you lose yourself also, right? Go ahead.
For whosoever shall be ashamed of me
Mm-hmm.
and of my words, of him shall the Son of Man be ashamed, when he shall come in his glory,
Mm-hmm.
and in his fathers, and of the holy angels.
So that's another thing. Whoever is ashamed of me and my words. So as you follow this truth, you should not be ashamed to speak the words of Yahweh. It doesn't mean you have to say it in every situation, but you shouldn't be ashamed to profess in who you believe in, right? At no point, because he said, if you're ashamed of me, then I'm ashamed of you too, right? Go ahead.
Verse 27.
Mm-hmm.
But I tell you of a truth,
Mm-hmm.
there be some standing here which shall not taste of death,
Right.
till they see the kingdom of Yahweh. And it came to pass about an 8 days.
Wait, and it came to pass how many days?
And it came to pass about an 8 days.
Uh-huh.
After these sayings, he took Peter and John and James
Mm-hmm.
and went up into a mountain to pray.
So notice that. What's very different about this verse, and in about 8 days, he took Peter and John and went up to the mountain to pray. Right? Go ahead.
Verse 29.
Mm-hmm.
And as he prayed, the fashion of his countenance was altered,
Mm.
and his raiment was white and glistering.
So notice that. On the 8th day, right, as he prayed, the fashion of his countenance was altered, and his raiment was white and glistening. On the 8th day, he went into what? The Spirit. So we're seeing the significance of why it's telling you that 8th day is important to you. Go ahead.
And behold, there talked with him 2 men,
Mm-hmm.
which were Moses and Elias,
Mm-hmm.
who appeared in glory, and spake of his decease, which he should accomplish at Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
But Peter and they that were with him were heavy with sleep.
Right? So he, in the 8th day, he went into the spiritual realm, but many people were still asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Go ahead.
And when they were awake, they saw his glory,
Mm-hmm.
and the 2 men that stood with him.
They woke up in that spirit. Go ahead.
And it came to pass, as they departed from him, Peter said unto Yahushua,
Mm-hmm.
Master, it is good for us to be here,
Mm-hmm.
and let us make 3 tabernacles, one for thee, and one for Moses, and one for Elias, not knowing what he said.
So go back and read that verse again. Start that again.
And it came to pass, as they departed from him, Peter said unto Yahushua, Master, it is good for us to be here,
Now, just read that sentence that follows that.
and let us make 3 tabernacles.
What is this about? Tabernacles. When did this take place? The 8th day. After consecration, he wanted to make tabernacles for them to stay in. Go ahead.
One for thee,
Mm-hmm.
and one for Moses,
Mm-hmm.
and one for Elias, not knowing what he said.
Mm-hmm.
While he thus spake, there came a cloud, and overshadowed them,
Mm-hmm.
and they feared as they entered into the cloud.
Right? There was a cloud following the Israelites, was there not? Go ahead.
And when the voice was past, Yahushua was found alone, and they kept it close, and told no man in those days any of those things which they had seen.
So you see how peculiar that is. After 8 days, this took place. And when he woke up into that spiritual realm, he said, he wanted to make 3 tabernacles for them. So again, tabernacles is still related, even though we're in this part of the New Testament, even though it doesn't look like it's saying anything about it, but it still makes the connection as you go all the way through the book. So let's go a little further. Let's go to John, chapter 20. We're almost there. I'll see you in the wilderness. John chapter 20, we're going to read from 24 to 29.
Reading out of the book of John, chapter 20 and verse 24. But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Yahushua came. The other disciples therefore said unto him, We have seen the King. But he said unto them, Except I shall see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe.
Sounds like most Israelites, does it not? Right? But what does verse 26 say?
And after 8 days, again his disciples were within, and Thomas with them. Then came Yahushua, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst, and said, Peace be unto you.
So notice he came through the doors.
Yeah.
The doors were shut. Right, go ahead.
Then saith he to Thomas, Reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands, and reach hither thy hand, and thrust it into my side, and be not faithless, but believing.
And be not faithless and believing. So notice what he said to him. Be not faithless, but believing. So you couldn't even touch him unless you had the proper faith.
Right.
Because he wasn't just an average man standing, right? He was of a different substance at this point. Because remember, he just came through the door with the door shut. So in order to touch me, you see me, don't be faithless. Go ahead.
And Thomas answered and said unto him, My King and my power. Yahushua saith unto him, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen and yet have believed.
That's a blessing to us. All right. Let's go to Romans chapter 2 and verse 28. I'm not going to go into the contention of this verse. We're just going to continue with the message. So I'm not going to digress with where this normally goes when we read this verse. Romans, Salakia, turn back. Chapter 2 and verse 28. I believe I said there. 2 and 28.
Yeah, you ready?
Oh, go ahead.
Reading out of the book of Romans, chapter 2 and verse 28. For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly.
Right.
Neither is that circumcision, which is outward in the flesh.
Right. So it's not just the act alone, right? Is what he's saying. Go ahead.
But he is a Jew, which is one inwardly. And circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of Yahweh.
So he's given us the spiritual understanding of the laws, right? We just read that example with Thomas, because Thomas was by the letter. Unless I touch him, and he's in front of me, I will not believe it. But he said, be not faithless when you do this. So Thomas was about the physical touch, but Yahushua told him what? Have faith in order to even do this. So he was making him a Jew inwardly, right? Because Thomas was, I got to touch him. This has got to happen. That's the letter of the law. But Yahushua just told him, no. You got to have the spirit in order for this to take place, right? So now let's go to 1 Corinthians, chapter 15 and verse 27. Shut off. And we're just going to read 27 out of that one.
Let me know when you're ready, guys.
Go ahead.
Reading out of the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 15 and verse 27.
You know what? Start at, I don't want to do this now. Go up a bit. Let's start at verse
20?
Yeah, I'm thinking 20. Yeah, 20.
Reading out of the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 20.
Go ahead.
But now is Mashiach risen from the dead,
Mm-hmm.
and become the first fruits of them that slept.
First fruits, another holy day. Go ahead.
For since by man came death,
Mm-hmm.
by man came also the resurrection of the dead.
Right.
For as in Adam all died,
Mm-hmm.
even so in Mashiach shall all be made alive.
Right.
But every man in his own order. Mashiach the first fruits,
Mm-hmm.
afterward they that are Mashiach's at his coming.
Mm-hmm.
Then cometh the end.
So notice, then cometh the end. Then cometh the end. What holy day is after this that we're required to keep? That's right after this. This is the last one, right?
Khan or Passover.
That starts the beginning. So what's after this? Nothing.
Nothing.
Then cometh the end. Tabernacles represents the end. That's why we're out in tabernacles and booths, because everything's gone. Then cometh the end. Go ahead.
When he shall have delivered up the kingdom to Yahweh.
So notice, he's going to have the kingdom, but he's going to deliver it up to Yahweh. Yahweh just doesn't accept a sacrifice. It has to be consecrated first, and then he will take it. On what day?
8.
You see the importance of keeping that? Go ahead.
Even the Father,
Mhm.
when he shall have put down all rule and all authority and power.
Mm-hmm.
For he must reign. So he hath put all enemies under his feet.
So I want you to look at that sentence, right? It says, for he must reign till. So there's even a limit to how long he's reigning, right? Till he hath put all enemies under his feet. Go ahead.
The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death.
So death is essentially like a spirit, or it's a being itself, because for it to be destroyed, it has to be something. Go ahead.
For he hath put all things under his feet.
Mm-hmm.
But when he saith all things are put under him, it is manifest that he is accepted,
Mm-hmm.
which did put all things under him.
Right? So it notice it's manifest that he is accepted. Right? So this is that 8th day. Right? Go ahead. So now let's go from here. Let's go to 1 Peter 3. A lot of reading, but it all sticks together. And we're going to read 18 to 22. First Peter 3. Mm-hmm.
Reading out of the book of 1 Peter, chapter 3 and verse 18.
Go ahead.
For Mashiach also hath once suffered for sins,
Mm-hmm.
the just for the unjust,
Right?
that he might bring us to Yahweh,
Right? That's reconciliation. Right?
being put to death in the flesh, but quickened by the Spirit,
Right? Go ahead.
by which also he went and preached unto the spirits in prison,
Go ahead.
which sometime were disobedient,
Mm-hmm.
when once the long suffering of Yahweh waited in the days of Noah,
Mm-hmm.
while the ark was preparing,
Right?
wherein few, that is, 8 souls, were saved by water.
How many?
8 souls were saved by water.
See how many times that number comes up? Right? Because we always talk about 7, but we forget that 8 is there just as much as the 7 is, right? So what did I say, to 20? 22, go ahead.
The like figure, whereunto even baptism
Mhm.
doth also now save us,
Mm-hmm. Also, in addition to, go ahead,
not the putting away of the filth of the flesh,
because it's not the water itself, go ahead.
but the answer of a good conscience toward Yahweh.
So it's again, just like Abraham did when he circumcised his flesh, he took that first step. This is the same thing. This is even doth also in addition to. So it's not left out, it's in addition to. Go ahead.
By the resurrection of Yahweh Shai
Go ahead.
HaMashiach,
Mm-hmm.
who is gone into heaven and is on the right hand of Yahweh,
Mhm.
angels and authorities and powers being made subject unto him.
2 Peter 2 and 4.
Reading out of the book of 2 Peter,
Chapter 2 and verse 4.
reading out of the book of 2 Peter, chapter 2 and verse 4.
Hold up. Hold up. Make sure. Okay, yeah.
That's what you want?
Yeah, 4 and 5.
For if Yahweh spared not the angels that sinned,
Mm-hmm.
but cast them down to hell,
Mm-hmm.
and delivered them into chains of darkness,
Right.
to be reserved unto judgment,
Mm-hmm.
and spared not the old world, but saved Noah, the eighth person,
But save Noah, the 8th person. He is reminding you again. Go ahead.
a preacher of righteousness,
Mm-hmm.
bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly.
So notice, save Noah, the 8th person. There's a reason he mentioned the number that way, right? And we're starting to see that theme reoccurring as we read. Let's go to Revelation chapter 22 and verse 1.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Reading out of the book of Revelation, chapter 22 and verse 1.
Then read the 5.
And he showed me a pure river of water of life,
Mhm.
clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of Yahweh and of the Lamb. In the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, was there the tree of life,
Mhm.
which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations.
Right.
And there shall be no more curse, but the throne of Yahweh and of the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him.
Mm-hmm.
And they shall see his face, and his name shall be in their foreheads. And there shall be no night there, and they need no candle, neither light of the sun, for the Most High Yahweh giveth them light, and they shall reign forever and ever.
That's beautiful. All praises. That's into the kingdom, right? Let's go to John 4 and 24. We're almost there. Actually, I'm sorry. What did I say? 4 and 24?
Yeah, John 4:24.
Right. So yeah, 4 and 24. We can read that really quick.
Reading out of the book of John, chapter 4 and verse 24.
Mm-hmm.
Yahweh is a spirit,
Mm-hmm.
and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth.
Right. Keeping the law, statutes, commandments, and the faith. He is a spirit, and you must worship him in spirit. Thomas, when he saw Yahweh Shai, in spirit, he had to do it, right? All right. That was it with that one. Hosea 9 and 1.
Reading out of the book of Hosea, chapter 9 and verse 1.
Mm-hmm.
Rejoice not, O Israel,
Mm-hmm.
for joy as other people, for thou hast gone a whoring from thy power.
Mm.
Thou hast loved a reward, thou hast loved a reward upon every cornflower.
Right.
The floor and the winepress shall not feed them, and the new wine shall fill in her. They shall not dwell in the Most High's land, but Ephraim shall return to Egypt, and they shall eat unclean things in Assyria.
Mm-hmm.
They shall not offer wine offerings to the Most High, neither shall they be pleasing unto him. Their sacrifices shall be unto them as the bread of mourners. All that eat thereof shall be polluted. For their bread, for their soul, shall not come into the house of the Most High.
Because remember, they're unclean at this point, right? We're going right back into the origin of tabernacles. Go ahead. We're going to jump this. Go ahead.
What will ye do in the solemn day,
Mm-hmm.
and in the day of the feast of the Most High?
So what will you do in the solemn day, in the separated day, and in the feast of the Most High? Could that be the 8th day? Right? What will you do being unclean during that time?
Not going to be
Right?
accepted.
So let's go to Joshua. Almost done.
Con.
Ain't that the myth? We'll leave that. That's Mr. We're going to do a lot of reading, right? The difference is I don't tell you that. We just keep reading. All right, so the book of Joshua. We're going to read chapter 6. And we're going to go to 16. We're going to jump around a bit on this one, and then this is almost going to come to a wrap. Good twist. 6 and what's 16? I'm not even.
Start at 16?
Start at 6. 6 and 6.
6 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
Reading out of the book of Joshua, chapter 6 and verse 6.
Mm-hmm.
And Joshua, the son of Nun, called the priests, and said unto them, take up the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of rams' horns before the ark of the Most High.
Right, so remember, just before, right, we had atonement, and then we had trumpets, right? Go ahead.
And he said unto the people, pass on, and compass the city. And let him that is armed pass on before the ark of the Most High.
Right.
And it came to pass, when Joshua had spoken unto the people, that the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of rams' horns passed on before the Most High, and blew with the trumpets, and the ark of the covenant of the Most High followed them.
Right.
And the armed men went before the priests that blew with the trumpets, and the reward came after the ark, the priests going on and blowing the trumpets. And Joshua had commanded the people, saying, ye shall not shout, nor make any noise with your voice, neither shall any word proceed out of your mouth until the day I bid you shout. Then shall you shout.
You won't say a thing until I command you to speak. Go ahead.
So the ark of the Most High compassed the city, going about it once, and they came into the camp and lodged in the camp. And Joshua arose early in the morning. And the priests took up the ark of the Most High. And 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets of rams' horns before the ark of the Most High went on continually, and blew with the trumpets, and the armed men went before them. But the reward came after the ark of the Most High. Right,
and he said, remember that saying, he said, I'm coming and my reward is with me. And the reward was behind him. Go ahead.
And the priests going on and blowing with the trumpets. And the second day they compassed the city once and returned into the camp. So they did 6 days. And it came to pass on the 7th day that they rose early about the dawning of the day, and compassed the city after the same manner 7 times. Only on that day they compassed the city 7 times. And it came to pass at the 7th time, when the priests blew with the trumpets, Joshua said unto the people, shout, for the Most High have given you the city, and the city shall be accursed, even it and all that are therein. So notice that,
It's a shout, for Yahweh hath given you the city. How did they say the Lord was going to return? With a shout. So if Yahweh Shai is returning, he's giving the earth to us. He told them to march around and don't say a word until I tell you. They marched around for 7 days. And then finally, when that time was up, he said, shout, for he has given you the city. So when he comes with a loud shout, then that, what trumpet? 7 trumpets. This is why we keep it. That's when it's a wrap. Because at this point, that city is destroyed. And the same thing with his coming, Let's go to verse 20.
Verse 20. So the people shouted when the priest blew with the trumpets. And it came to pass, when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city.
Verse 23.
Verse 23. And the young men that were spies went in, and brought out Rahab, and her father, and her mother, and her brethren, and all that she had. And they brought out all her kindred, and left them without the camp of Israel.
She had faith, but they stayed out the camp. Go ahead. Verse 24.
And they burnt the city with fire, and all that was therein.
So notice, how is it going to come in the end?
Fire.
With fire, Go ahead.
And all that was therein. Only the silver and the gold, and the vessels of brass and iron, they put into the treasury of the house of the Most High.
27.
So the Most High was with Joshua, and his fame was noised throughout all the country.
Verse 27 is heavier than it looks, right? It says, so Yahweh was with Joshua, and his name was noised throughout all the city. Joshua is another form of Yahweh. Yahweh is salvation. So it says, so Yahweh is with Yahweh, representation, symbolic, and its fame was noised throughout all the country, right? As the same way it's going to be in the end when his name goes all throughout the earth. So let's drop that and go to 1 Thessalonians. And we get ready to wrap this up. I'm sorry, 1 Thessalonians, 4. Okay. All right. Where am I going after this?
16.
Leave it out. Oops, slide. Jump right out of it. So 1 Thessalonians 4, you're going to start at verse 15 and read 16. Yeah. Go ahead.
Reading out of the book of 1 Thessalonians, chapter 4, and verse 15.
Go ahead.
For this we say unto you by the word of the Most High, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Hamashiach shall not prevent them which are asleep.
Mm-hmm.
For the Adawan himself shall descend from heaven with a shout.
This is what we just read that happened in trumpets, in the Feast of Trumpets, right? This is why we're rehearsing the righteous acts. Go ahead.
With the voice of the archangel,
Mm-hmm.
and with the trump of Yahweh,
Mm-hmm.
and the dead in Mashiach shall rise first.
Right? So we see this is a prelude to what's coming in the future, right? Let's drop that. Let's go to 1 Corinthians. (15 to 51). All right.
So 1 Corinthians 15.
15, 51 to 53. Ugh, sorry about that. That's the one. I ain't got.
Reading out of the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 15 and verse 51.
Okay, now go ahead.
Behold, I show you a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
We shall not all sleep, but we shall be all changed.
Mm-hmm.
In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump,
Mm-hmm.
for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible,
Mm-hmm.
and we shall be changed.
Right.
For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality.
So, in the examples of everything we read, whenever that change or that spirituality took place, what day did it take place? On the 8th day, right? So we're starting to see, because notice what he said, and the trumpet shall shout, right? We'll already be out in the wilderness by that point. We'll already be out of our cities, right? And then this change will come. So basically what I'm saying to you is, if you follow the holy days, you see his plan unfold. So we will not know the day nor the hour, but we will know the season of his coming, right? So let me wrap this up for you real quick. So Passover, right? We were redeemed, right? We were cleansed. Our sins was cleansed, right? What happened in the Old Testament, right? Went out, destroyed the city, sent the plagues, right? And we were redeemed. We were brought through the river, which is a form of baptism. Followed the cloud, right? And then what came after that? Unleavened bread. So now that we're in this land, we're supposed to change, leave behind Egypt and all the old things of the world, right? This is a form of our deliverance, right? After that, 50 days later comes Pentecost, right? This was the first resurrection, right? This is the first fruits and things of that nature coming up. After that is the memorial of the blowing of the trumpets, right? This is what takes place prior to the return of the Mashiach, right? The trumpets are being blown into the announcement of the coming, right? That's what happened in the Old Testament. That's what happened with the walls of Jericho, right? So then we go to the Day of Atonement, right? So now the trumpets have been blown. So now it's our times of making atonement for the sins that we committed, right?
That's right.
So now this is prior to our change, right? Prior to this coming. After this, right, we're atoning for our sins, everything we did in the world, right? Some of us will make it, some of us won't. Comes the Feast of Tabernacles. Now we're out in the wilderness, right? This represents when Yahweh Shai gathers us together, right? And brings us to the wilderness. The rebels are going to be purged out. Because people even then are still going to be sinning and still going about the wrong way. Because just like our forefathers, when they came out of Egypt, they were complaining, oh, we had onions and we had all this great thing. They were going to be complaining too when this time comes, right? And under that, we're under the ban of Israel. And then when that's over, right? And those of us who remain, who did what we were supposed to do, we will change that, right? Because our Mashiach is there now, right? Our Mashiach is there, and then now we're changing. He's going to put all the enemies underneath him, right? And once all the enemies are done, he returns it back to his Father, right? Follow that procession, and you see how it ends. The Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Pentecost, Memorial blowing of the trumpets, Day of Atonement, Feast of Tabernacles. And we can call it the 8th day. We're not required to, but we're asked to acknowledge it, right? Because there's a reason he keeps telling us the 8th day with the males. Noah's the 8th person. He wants you to pay attention to that because that's when that change comes in. We can't say what year that is or what day that is either, but he gives us an idea. So the whole purpose of this is that right now we're in the Feast of Tabernacles, and tonight is the first night. It is the first night of the beginning of the end in rehearsal, right? So when we're out there, we are going to celebrate. We're all going to have a good time. We're going to feast, but keep this in mind while we're out there. And keep in mind you're away from the city, away from distractions, and this is a time for you to be consecrated unto Yahweh Shai and unto Yahweh, and eventually that time will come, we'll be changed, and we'll be good. Hallelujah, we're done. I had like 50 more scriptures after that. I had to cut it short.
Hold on to that.